Every conflict has a moment where a hidden card gets played. Iran just played theirs. For the first time since this conflict began, Iran deployed the Sejjil missile, a system it had been developing for years, a system Iran deliberately held back until today. And the reason today feels different from every previous day comes down to one detail. The Sejjil gives almost no warning before it arrives. But why did Iran wait exactly 2 weeks before using it? And what does that timing tell us about what comes next? Well, let me explain. Disclaimer. When the confirmation came through today that Iran had deployed the Sejjil missile system for the first time in this conflict, the people who follow these developments closely understood immediately what it meant. This was not another iteration of something Iran had already used. This was not a larger version of a drone system or an upgraded cruise projectile. The Sejjil is a fundamentally different category of threat. And the fact that Iran had not used it in the first 2 weeks of this conflict while deploying virtually everything else in its arsenal was itself a signal. Iran was saving it. The Sejjil is a 2-stage solid-fuel ballistic system. It has been in development for years and has been described consistently by analysts as one of the most significant advancements in Iran's strategic capabilities. Its range puts a substantial portion of the region within reach, and its design incorporates features specifically intended to make it more difficult to intercept than the systems that have been used so far. But the most important thing about the Sejjil is not its range or its payload, it is the fuel. And to understand why that matters, you need to understand something about how defense systems actually work in practice, because it is not as simple as having a radar and an interceptor ready. So almost every major ballistic system Iran has deployed in this conflict until today uses liquid fuel. That technical detail sounds dry until you understand what it means operationally. A liquid fuel system has to be fueled before it can be launched. That fueling process takes time, anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours depending on the system. And during that fueling process, the system is visible. Satellites can detect the fuel trucks moving to the launch site. Intelligence assets can identify the preparation activity. Radar systems can begin tracking the site. And defense teams get something that is worth more than any interceptor in the world: warning time. Warning time is the foundation of every modern defense architecture. Patriot batteries, THAAD systems, Arrow interceptors, all of them are built around the assumption that there will be a detection window before a threat arrives. That window might be minutes. But those minutes are everything. They are the difference between an interceptor being in the air and a defense system still calculating its response. The Sejjil uses solid fuel. Solid fuel systems do not need to be fueled before launch. The propellant is already inside the system, sealed and ready. There are no fuel trucks to detect. There is no preparation window to observe. The gap between the launch order being given and the system leaving the ground is measured in minutes, not the hours that liquid fuel systems require. What that means practically is this: the defense systems that have been working to intercept Iranian projectiles throughout this conflict have been relying, at least partially, on the preparation signatures of liquid fuel systems to get early warning. With the Sejjil, that early warning advantage shrinks dramatically. The alarm may sound after the system is already in flight. The interceptor may be launched with significantly less time to reach its target, and the calculation that defense planners have been using for 2 weeks just got harder. For regular people watching this, who are not defense analysts, think of it this way. Imagine you are playing a game where someone has to throw a ball at a target and you have to block it. If you can see them picking up the ball, walking to the line, and winding up, you have time to get into position. But if the ball simply appears in the air with almost no warning, your reaction time is the only thing you have. That is the difference between liquid fuel and solid fuel in practical terms. Tell me in the comments. Did you know about the difference between solid fuel and liquid fuel systems before watching this? Because when I understood what it actually means for warning time, the significance of today's deployment became immediately clear. Drop your comment below. I read every single one of them. And here's the thing. The systems that have been deployed in this region to provide defense against incoming threats, Patriot, THAAD, Arrow, are extraordinarily sophisticated pieces of technology. They represent decades of development and billions of dollars of investment. And against the liquid fuel systems Iran has been deploying, they have performed significantly. But every defense system has a set of assumptions built into it. Those assumptions are based on the threat environment the system was designed to face. When a new capability enters the picture that challenges those assumptions, the effectiveness of the defense changes. The Sejjil's solid fuel design is specifically one of those assumption-challenging developments. It was not developed by accident. Iran's engineers understood exactly what they were building and why. A system that reduces the warning window available to defense teams is a system designed with the specific purpose of making existing defense architectures less effective. And there is another dimension to this. The defense systems in the region have been operating at an extraordinarily high tempo for 2 weeks. They have been intercepting threats at a rate that has depleted stockpiles of interceptor systems faster than anyone publicly anticipated. Israel itself has reportedly told the United States that its interceptor reserves are running critically low. Into that environment, depleted interceptors, stretched defense teams, 2 weeks of continuous operations, Iran introduced a system that compresses the response window. That combination of timing and capability is not accidental. It is the result of a strategy. The Sejjil has existed in Iran's arsenal for years. Iran has tested it. Iran has refined it. And Iran chose not to use it for the first 2 weeks of this conflict while deploying essentially everything else it had. That restraint was deliberate. And the decision to end that restraint today was equally deliberate. When a military force holds back a capability and then deploys it, the timing of that deployment tells you something about how that force is reading the situation. Iran deploying the Sejjil on day 17 of this conflict, after 2 weeks of assessing the defense landscape, after watching interceptor stockpiles deplete, after observing how defense systems have been responding to the threats it has already deployed, suggests a calculated judgment that the moment was right. There are several possible reasons for that judgment. The depleted interceptor situation makes defense systems more vulnerable to a threat that compresses response time. The operational tempo of defense teams, after 2 weeks of continuous operations, creates its own pressure. And the psychological impact of introducing a new capability, of signaling that there is more in reserve than what has been seen so far, has its own strategic value. The Sejjil being deployed today is not just a military event, it is a message. And the message is, what you have seen for 2 weeks is not everything we have. Iran waited exactly 2 weeks before using this. Does that timing tell you something about the strategy being followed? Tell me what you think in the comments. I genuinely want to know how people are reading this. Now, here is where today becomes even more significant. Because the Sejjil deployment did not happen in isolation. It happened on the same day as 2 other developments that together paint a very specific picture of where this conflict stands right now. The first is what happened, or more precisely, what did not happen, with the U.S. request for coalition support. Reports confirm today that the United States reached out to multiple countries asking them to contribute warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. The list of countries approached included France, Germany, Norway, the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, and others. The result was extraordinary in its uniformity. France declined officially in writing. Germany said nothing, which in diplomatic terms carries the same weight as a refusal. Norway declined. The United Kingdom said it was discussing options with allies, which is the diplomatic phrasing for not yet, but probably not. Japan stayed silent, despite the fact that the vast majority of its Middle East energy supply passes through the very waterway in question. South Korea made a similar calculation and declined to commit. 10 countries were approached. 0 warships were committed. That is not a partial coalition. That is complete isolation. The second development was the response from Washington to that isolation. Rather than recalibrate, Trump warned publicly that NATO faces a very bad future if its allies do not help the United States in this situation. Threatening an alliance of 32 countries with consequences for not joining a conflict they had no say in starting is not a standard diplomatic posture. It is the posture of a side that is running out of options for expanding its coalition. So the picture today is this. Iran deploys its most feared system for the first time. 0 countries respond to the U.S. request for help, and Washington threatens its own alliance over the lack of support. Those 3 things happening on the same day are not coincidental. They are a snapshot of exactly where this conflict stands after 17 days. Where are you watching from tonight? Because the combination of the Sejjil being deployed and 0 allies responding to the U.S. request looks very different depending on where in the world you sit. Tell me your country in the comments. I read every single one. And here's where things stand tonight. Iran deployed the Sejjil missile system for the first time in 17 days of conflict. A solid fuel system that reduces warning time, compresses the response window for defense teams, and was specifically designed to challenge the assumptions built into existing interceptor architectures. Iran did not use this system in week 1. Iran did not use it in week 2. Iran used it today. And the decision to use it today, after watching interceptor stockpiles deplete, after observing 2 weeks of how defense systems respond, is a calculated one. On the same day, 10 countries declined to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz, and Washington responded by threatening its own alliance with consequences. Iran has been revealing its capabilities in sequence throughout this conflict. Drones first, cruise systems next, ballistic projectiles after that, drone boats, sea mines, and now, on day 17, the system it had been holding back. The question that comes out of today is not whether the Sejjil changes the outcome of this conflict by itself. One system does not do that. The question is, what comes after the system that Iran was saving for the right moment? Because if the Sejjil was being held back, what else is? But what is your opinion on this? Comment down below. If you are curious to find more, then make sure to click on one of the videos you see on the screen. And with that, we come to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the video, then turn on the notifications bell on this channel. Also, please share this video with as many people as possible. Let's get this news out there.